Well, it's been a great day here at the LeMieux National Dressage Championships. We've been in the fan zone all day, Bobby. We've had some great interviews so far, and we've still got one more to come.
Yes, we're here with the lovely Dannie Morgan, and I have to say a huge thank you for literally running off your horse to come right here. So let's just talk about that. It's just happened. How did your test go?
Yeah, to be honest, it was a bit of a car crash. So yeah, it started well. We did the pre-St. George freestyle, and yeah, the trot work all went well. As I hit canter, the canter music cut out. So I just carried on winging it, and I wasn't sure if Peter at sea was going to ring the bell and let me start again, but yeah, just carried on. And I think I was sort of unsure as to where I roughly was because the music kept coming in and out. So yeah, just rocked with it. I made a few errors in the changes, but yeah, it's a bit of fun. And in those situations, you've just got to sort of, deal with what you've got. And yeah, we did that.
And that's not the first person. We've all experienced this when you've done a freestyle. It is a little bit the fear, isn't it, as a rider? Please, music work. So for everyone else that's like hoping this doesn't happen to them, but how did you deal with it out there? I know you just kept going, but mentally, what were you thinking?
Well, I thought, oh, this is a car crash, but I might as well laugh and just have a bit of fun with it. I think everyone else enjoyed it. So that's the main thing, yeah.
That's brilliant, that's brilliant. And it does happen, doesn't it? It really does. So you've had a busy show here. How many more horses have you got to compete?
So I think I have another 3/4 classes. I had the Inter 1 gold earlier today with this horse, and he did a good test, got 69.4 or 5, which, yeah, it was a strong class, and actually for him did really a good test, so was pleased with that. And then I've had 2 5-year-olds in the Novice Gold Championship this morning. One of them came second, which was really good, and then the other one was 10th, both plus 70 scores, so yeah, really pleased with them in their first championship.
That's fantastic, and you've won many, many national titles. How does it feel to be here at Somerford, and the difference between here and Stoneleigh?
I love this venue. I mean, I think it's much more horse friendly than Stoneleigh. I think there's lots of space, and actually you can go and hack the horses around the back and, sort of get away from everything. And also it's nice to be parked quite close in the lorries, which is great. But yeah, no, I just think it's a friendly, more relaxed feel, and yeah, definitely feels more horse friendly. I think at Stoneleigh, when you have to go down that runway on maybe a fresh horse and then be in the arena with lots of people, yeah, it wasn't always the safest thing. But yeah, I think Somerford is a great venue.
And obviously you've ridden many sort of young horses, and this is the first horse that you've trained from young through right to Grand Prix that's obviously yours. Do you think it's a really good experience for the young horses at a venue like this?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, my two have never seen anything like this, and actually I've got my 4-year-old on tomorrow. And we came up on Wednesday, but I think it's just good to have, if you can, give them a few days to settle in, and we've sort of mooched around, no pressure. But I mean, it's also sometimes you get a surprise because we did the arena walk this morning with the 2 mares, and then when the wind picks up and you go back in, they suddenly feel a bit nervous when you go around the edge. But I think if you can go around and give them confidence, then yeah, it definitely sets them up, yeah, for a good career for the future.
And we've already touched on the freestyle side of things, and maybe you can both answer this, but when you're putting together your floor plan and your music, tell me about that process. How does it start?
So I think to start with, we sort of think about what would maybe suit the horses, what sort of patterns and different exercises that you maybe can do well at home, which you can put into your program that will show off the highlights that the horse has got, really. I mean, I actually borrowed the music from a friend of mine, Jez Palmer, and so we only had a couple of weeks just to actually change the floor plan, so it was, winged it a little bit, but yeah, tried to put a few different exercises in the changes on a bending line, and I did my pirouettes up the centre line. Yeah, so just tried to make it a bit interesting, and I think ultimately the freestyles are meant to be a bit of fun, really, so yeah, we've done the hard bit from the straight test. And
I definitely agree with that. And I think it's important as well that we really highlight the fact that you can really put the movements in that the horse is really, really good at. If it's got a good walk, put it right in front of the judges. If it's got a bad walk, you're going to walk up that long side, aren't you? Away from them. And I think the biggest thing is the music for me. I always want to feel really inspired. Like I come down that centre line and I own the world. I don't know if you're sort of the same with the music.
Yeah, it's great having music, which you love, isn't it? But then I think it's also thinking about what maybe the judges would like as well. So trying to find that balance. Yeah.
And about the free line, this is something we talk about. So sometimes things don't always go to plan. Would you both always add in a free line that you can?
Yes, I think, yeah. my plan today was either, if I messed up the changes, then I could have a line for the changes, or if I needed to repeat a piri or something like that. It's nice just to know that you've got a bit of spare music to add something in if needed.
Also nerve-wracking though, because you do realise that is the last opportunity you have to get the movement. So you're like, I can do this, and I might have made a mistake on that one too. So
Yeah.
Puts the pressure on, doesn't it?
I find that it does as well, actually. It's one or two, really.
And for those that are new to the sport, I think the importance in that line is that although you can decide when to do things, it is in the test like how many changes you need to have or how many pirouettes, and that's why it's important, isn't it? You've got to show the pre-prescribed amount of steps and changes. Or
Definitely, the judges can't get you a mark. At the end of the day, the judges are there not to be cruel. As everyone, sometimes give the judges a hard time. They're there to really help you and be your friend. But if you don't have the opportunity to show them what you can do, what they've got in front of them on a piece of paper, then they just can't give you the mark.
And final question about freestyle. How important is it that you really know the music well so that if you get left behind, you can cut a corner or something? Because you were freestyling it a little bit today, more ways than one. You'd only had the music a couple of weeks. Does that make things harder?
Yeah, I think you've just got to try and listen to the music a lot. So there's normally, quite a few changes in the music for your transitions, and maybe transition to a pirouette or transition to walk or trot. So as long as you roughly know where you need to be, you can maybe shave off some corners and things like that to get back on the right line, or use a bit of speed.
Exactly, kick on. And that's a really fair point, actually, for a lot of people. I know people always ask, where do they even start to put their music together? Put your cues in there. Because when you have music that's just the same for the whole trot work, it's the worst. Don't you feel like you're chasing, aren't you?
Yeah.
And you never quite know. So having those cues in there to tell you, actually, no, I am supposed to be here, it really does help you ride on time.
Little sort of reminders throughout the test.
And also, I think we don't want the judges to fall asleep either. I think they sit for a lot of
Elevator
tests,
music,
so,
yes.
Yeah.
And quick reminder, if you're watching us online, then you can ask any questions you want to Danny. Just stick it in the comments box below. Don't forget to hit that share button as well. Let your friends know that they can watch, they can get involved with the conversation as well. Danny, we've talked about today. Let's go back in time now. So your family didn't really have an equestrian background. So how did you get involved?
No, that's right. So from a young age, I've always loved horses, but none of my family are into horses at all. So I remember just asking Mum when we were sort of 10 or 11 whether for a birthday we could have a riding lesson at just the local riding school. So got into it like that, and then we used to, as soon as we went for a riding lesson, got the bug for it. So in the holidays, 6 weeks holidays, we used to literally live at the stables and used to work up there and return for free rides and things like that. And then, we was hooked on it really, and then it just evolved, then started working with horses, and I knew it was something I wanted to do as a career. And then I think you have to work hard, and as long as you show that you want to work hard and you're committed to it, I think opportunities can come. I think it it helps location wise. I think it was easier in that the riding school wasn't too far a distance that my mum could take us, but I think any opportunity you have when you're younger, you just have to grab it.
In terms of riding school, I mean, so many of us started in riding schools. I've always felt they're a little bit detached from our sport and from all the equestrian disciplines. Like when I was at a riding school, I never knew who John Whittaker was or who Carl Hester was or, Dane Rollins of that day. Do you think there's any way that we could kind of unite and maybe try and use riding schools to feed our audience of the sport?
Yeah, I mean, I think when I was at a riding school, I just loved horses. But I think what it was, I initially evented for quite a few years, and when I went to badminton horse trials when I was sort of 14, and I thought, wow, this is what the professional sport is, and I thought it was amazing, and that's what got me involved into it. So I think maybe if people had a chance to go to maybe these bigger events, like come to the nationals and the competition and see what the sport is like at the top end, I think it's quite inspiring, especially for the younger riders.
We've got to talk about eventing as well, Bobby, haven't we? Because
we do. It's
very hard to do one discipline, never mind two.
Exactly. I mean, I struggle with the dressage every day. You've done the eventing as well. So how did you even get from the eventing into the dressage?
Really, dressage has never been my main thing. I've loved eventing and cross country, and I evented for like 10, 11 years and worked at an event yard. And I actually got an opportunity to ride a few horses in the dressage, young horses that were trickier, and just started like that, doing the competing them at novice level, and then I actually rode for the Oppenheimers, a few of their younger horses, and got into it like that. And so I was doing the dressage and the eventing alongside, and And yeah, I think I was lucky to ride some nice horses and had a fair amount of success. And I think the transition was quite easy because I ended up with more dressage horses than event horses, and I think eventing is so time consuming that it is really hard to do both, so it just was a natural transition in the end.
And are we right in saying that the horse you have here in the Grand Prix, you used to event him first and then he started dressage?
I've not actually got him here, but yeah, he's the first horse, Southern Cross Braemar, that I trained to Grand Prix, and he's actually dressage bred, but I evented him as a 5-year-old. And I bought him initially thinking that I would potentially sell him, so I thought that maybe he would be worth more money as a dressage horse, so got into it like that really, and then actually together trained from a 5-year-old up to Grand Prix, and then I love the training of the horses, and I think that was really what done it for me.
And I've seen you ride many, many young horses, and you're incredibly talented. It's always a pleasure to watch you. Because you've ridden so many now, and now you've come down that centre line at the Grand Prix, what type of horse do you think now you're going to keep looking for into the future that really suits you as a rider?
Well, I think, there's many different types of horses that, are actually able to be good Grand Prix horses, but I think temperament is the main thing. They have to be willing and wanting to do the job, really, and have a natural engine. I think it helps, the more talented the horse, if the suppleness and the looseness comes, in the basic gaits, then it makes the rider's job a lot easier. But I think mainly the temperament, and actually the sort of work ethic and the desire to sort of move forward naturally really helps.
Yeah. And you can really see that in the way you ride. You have the passion, you have a lot of empathy with the horse, and I think that's really important, because I think you can be a good rider. To be a great rider, you have to have empathy. So for all those riders that are looking up at you, very much knowing that you haven't come from a horsey background, you did the riding schools first, what piece of advice would you give to all of them to show that you can be, for example, here like you are today?
I think, try and ride as many different horses as you can. Different types of horses, and just develop a feel, and and actually try and work out the keys to bringing on the young horses, and I think that's really helped me, definitely. I think I'd say ride as many different horses that you can, and just take opportunities where you can.
Oh, that's good.
And training a horse right up to Grand Prix level, I mean, that must be a big achievement. Just tell us about that process, because I think some people may feel it's just a case of going through the progression, but there's lots of little kind of hills along the way that you have to climb over. Just kind of tell us about that process. Yeah,
I think, the horses, they all go at different rates, and I think I was quite lucky in the sense that to actually train my horse to Grand Prix and put all of the movements on him didn't feel too difficult. And I think, as anyone, I look back now and you think, oh God, actually it's not so easy. And I think I was lucky that I had a horse with a super temperament, and he's taught me a lot, and quite generous in when I made some errors on him. But I think you realise it's not so easy, and every horse is different. But I think since training him to Grand Prix, I now have a better understanding of the strength required, to do it. And in hindsight, I'd maybe have waited a bit longer. But hey, I trained my first one, and I think I've learned a lot on him to then bring on to the other younger horses.
And once you've ridden the Grand Prix, it really is, there's nothing quite like it, is there?
No. I think it's like when you ride your first small tour, you ride your first into 1, into 2, and you think, oh God, it's coming up fast, and then you get to Grand Prix and you're like, oh, actually
that was nothing.
So it definitely it's taken me a while just to get to grips and take a breath through the test, and it all comes up thick and fast. But great, and I admire watching all of the top riders here. I think you can learn so much from just watching at these championships.
And when you look at the sort of percentages and the placings after the Grand Prix, do you find that although you're competing against everyone else, you're also almost competing against yourself as well, and you're looking for that kind of personal best?
Definitely. I think most of the riders, are trying to compete against themselves. I think it's very difficult, and I think it's only when you get to that top level that actually all the riders really appreciate how difficult it is. And I think it's easy to sit at the outside and thinking, oh, actually, this needs to be better. But it's not easy. So I think mainly I've been competing against myself. But I mean, when you watch the guys like Charlotte and stuff, I mean, they have so much time around the test. So I think that experience really helps. So I think more times you can get in the arena.
And for those that are riding at the low levels and really aspiring to be up there, I think the basics are still exactly the same. We still have that scale of training, the kind of rhythm, the impulsion, the balance, the straight, all that stuff still is so important.
Yeah, definitely. I think that is the most important thing, and I don't think I had appreciated that as much as to when I got there. And I think the basics are the most important thing, and I think that's really what makes a good rider. The ones that really tune into the smaller details, it's just so nice to see a horse going correctly.
And when you're both riding at home, because you're both riders, trying to talk about how much time you spend test riding, how much time you spend working on things like transitions.
I think it's very much an individual to the horse. I mean, certain horses you have to constantly ride the lines of the test. Other horses you really don't want to, because once they start predicting it, it gets incredibly difficult. But you've got to think that we will naturally already in our training be doing the lines from the test. It's only diagonal lines. It's a straight line down the middle of the arena. Actually, there isn't really that complicated lines. And all of the movements that are in a test are training that you would do naturally at home anyway, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. And I think, we could probably all sharpen up our test riding a bit before a big championships, but often we're working just on the basic straightness and not necessarily test movements the whole time. More suppleness and strength exercises.
And for those that don't have arenas at home and you're just going out hacking all the time, you can still work on those movements out hacking, can't you?
Massively so. If you can walk down the middle of the road, hopefully no cars in the way and get run over. But if you can walk down the middle of the road pretty straight in your horse, okay, that's a centre line pretty much, isn't it? And, you can leg yield and everything like that on the road and things, obviously safety and things. But so you can definitely still keep training and keeping your horse supple even if you are only able to hack.
Yeah.
I think that's useful as well, isn't it? To be able to train them out hacking, to give their brains a bit of a rest, but still educate while you're out there as well. Is that something you do? Do you?
Yeah, I try to do some hacking with my horses and some hill work, a lot of hill work, and with the younger horses especially, I find it's a great way if you can find some steep hills to walk up and down, and I'll repeat that like 4 or 5 times, a good way to try and get them stronger over their back, which actually without putting strain on their legs.
And in terms of lunging, obviously, again, horse dependent, but do you build stuff like lunging and long reining into your young horses?
We very much do. I wait a little bit until the young horses are a bit older to do the long reining, just because for safety reasons personally. But lunging, definitely. I mean, you have to. I mean, I don't know how you do it, Danny, but we very much believe that the horse has to be able to lunge a certain way before you want to get a rider on, don't you? They have to have that sort of natural balance.
Yeah, and I think also, when the horses are having an easier day, it's great to lunge them, and also just actually to be able to see them, stand back and actually look at how the horses are looking. So I think that's important.
But when we talk about lunges, this is a really important point actually, because I know I have a lot of my clients and they don't always think about the lunging in the correct way. We're not talking about lunging on a head collar and letting them gallop off. They are still athletes. They have to be in a frame, they have to be secure. And I think for all those grassroots riders that are learning, I think that's a really important factor, isn't it? That you have to make sure that you lunge the horse in a gymnastic frame, not a head collar.
Yeah, and actually that you can try and keep the horses in balance on the lunge. It's not just about flying them around. And I think actually, it scares me when I see the horses just running around on the lunge, because you think about them doing injuries to themselves. Yeah.
Okay, so following on from that then, let's leave young horses for now, but the kind of novice horse moving up, you're off to tack them up to lunge them. What have we got on?
I'll lead. I'll go for the numner and the roller.
Okay. Side reins? Gadgets?
Gadgets, no. They have to. I do lunging side reins. It has to help with balance. No different. The side reins are the same as reins, so that's very important.
And I quite like using the rope actually. Because I think it's quite good. It stretches just like the rope that goes over the back between the front legs to the bit. I think it encourages them to stretch over their back and swing over their back. So I think that's quite good. And obviously you just tighten it accordingly to what you think. It doesn't need to be washing lines, but not too tight either. And actually the horse can just sort of use itself in a correct way.
One thing that drives me crazy when people are lunging is just watching them on the same circle for like half an hour. I don't know what you guys do, but I think lunging them up and down the school, like moving them off the lunge whip up and down, doing transitions, it's also important. It's almost like you're riding, isn't it? But from the ground.
Definitely. And you've got to be careful. So you've got to think about the surface. If you're lunging in one place all the time, it's going to get deep. That isn't good for the legs. And, you've got to lunge them as if you're schooling them. You must do transitions, because it is awful to get on a horse the day after being lunged, isn't it? And they haven't had transitions or anything done. They're long and they're strong, and it isn't a nice feeling. So it's important that you still work them on the lunge and get them through.
Yeah, and I think also it's important to actually watch the clock as well, because sometimes you can, you don't realise actually how long you've been lunging just on one rein or, out there. Actually, the horses don't need more than, I don't think personally, more than 10-15 minutes on the lunge. I think it's too much. So I think it's just important just to watch the clock and, not get too carried away. Just don't want to make them sore in their muscles.
It's great to be able to pick both your brains, so let's keep going with this. Spooky horses. What do we do for spooky horses? Top tips.
Well, I think it just really depends on the temperament of the horse, but generally try and give them confidence. And I would say, for the most part, try not to draw a big, make a big thing of it. If you can try and bend the horse's neck away from whatever it's spooking towards and push them towards it, and gradually get there and not make a big issue. I think it's sometimes worse if you make a big flap or something, then it almost creates a problem.
And use the opportunity at home. If you know they're going to be scared of flagpoles or a plastic bag or the classic umbrella when it's raining, make sure you do that at home all the time so they're in an environment they feel safe. But then you can show them things that does make them feel a little bit afraid.
Novice horses, novice riders, how much are we working on the track or off the track?
I always encourage my clients to try and ride on the inner track. We call it the dummy track, just going around the edge, because I think the horses like to lean on the wall, and you think you're straight, but actually it's only when you come on the inner track that you realise that you actually haven't got control of the horse's shoulders, and riding them straight down two reins, from two legs to two reins. And so I think it's important to try and ride as much as you can on the inside line.
I 100% agree. It's fascinating when you bring a novice rider off the track. They look like they're doing the tango, don't they, all over the place. It really highlights them how much you have to ride from your leg, your seat to the hand, doesn't it?
And also, to be fair, not just novice riders, I think also young horses, when we take the young horses off the wall, and it's the same for us. So I think it's attention to detail, and we have to do a lot of that work too with the young horses.
Transitions next.
Are you going to go through the whole of the dressage?
I'm here all night. We're here till it gets dark.
Go on, Danny.
Transitions. Do we do them just in and out of the paces, or do we do them within the pace as well?
So I think, start off basic, to begin with, and actually just basic walk-trot transitions. And actually, the transitions are just helping to rebalance the horse. And then, I think you can turn your walk-trot transitions into starting to develop a half halt. And it's just that moment of waiting time so you can rebalance the horse. And I think right from the beginning, it's great to do that. Yeah, so lots of walk-trot transitions, canter-trot transitions, trot-canter.
And how important is it, Bobby, when we're doing something like, so simple, trot to walk, to keep the horse's mind thinking forward into the walk?
Definitely. Everything we do in the equestrian world is a forward movement. We never want to think backwards. But fundamentally, you've got to think as well that the transitions are their stop and go. It's important that the horse goes off the leg, but also comes back on their seat so the rider feels safe, that you have the build-up to the half halt. But it's always a forward motion. It's never a stopping motion.
Straightness. Tips for straightness. How do we get straight?
Tip for straightness, I quite like riding with the young horses rather than riding circles. Ride some squares, so you're turning from the outside rein, not relying on the inside rein to turn the horses. So actually you really turn and get the shoulders straight, and actually before bend flexion, anything like that. I think actually if you can just ride the horse's head and neck straight and their shoulders straight, then you're on the right path.
It's the same, square, diamonds, it's the same thing. It's understanding that the horse has to turn the shoulder, not just turn in the neck, because obviously then there's other problems leading to that. So exact same thing, they understand the outside shoulder turns first.
We'll start with you, because you're just copying him now.
No, I'm not. It's Danny's into
impulsion. How do we get impulsion, Bobby?
Oh, it's the same again, isn't it, with transitions? You have to build the transitions to get the energy through the horse and getting the horse engaged. I think fundamentally transitions are everything in the dressage world, aren't they? If you have a real look and you study, which we'll all do when we're here watch how many times the riders are secretly riding a transition. I mean, when you ride the Grand Prix, how many transitions do you think you put just even getting ready for a half pass?
Yeah, I mean, probably not enough, but
we always need more, don't we? Always that little bit more. But yeah, and that builds up for the impulsion, the engagement. It's all the same thing. It's all that circle of life, I kind of think about it, isn't it? It's all running into each other. So things like that, I think transitions fix many, many things.
Lightening the forehand. How do we keep the forehand light?
So really comes from rebalancing them. So a half halt, and actually then engaging the hind leg, and then you want to feel like you can relax the hand without the horse falling into the hand like a ton of weights. And if they do, then again it's riding more transitions and maybe not putting in too much power. Do you want to put in more power, then you can actually manage the balance.
Collection.
You
There must
literally
be a
gonna-
collection by now.
We are. Let's stop at
do the
collection.
top.
It's collection.
Yeah, let's do the top,
Collection
isn't it?
again. It's just a transition within the gate. I think. I mean, obviously, I'll push this to Danny, but mainly for me, that the understanding of collection is that it's not the word slow.
Yeah.
It's always really interesting, isn't it, when you say to like people that you train, you know, collect the horse. They slow, don't they? And they lose that jump. Is that something that you find when you're training?
Yeah, and I think it's encouraging them actually. Yeah, the hind has to, should come more engaged. And it's the feeling of the horse's body coming shorter, but the neck trying to stay longer, which you see a common issue is actually the horse's neck gets shorter, the body stays long, and then the horse gets slow. So I think it's good to start riding transitions within the pace, and not just expecting a high degree of collection initially. And it takes years to train the horses until they're able to come back, on the spot. Almost like at the Grand Prix level, but actually with that amount of power. And I think actually it's giving the horse time, and starting to try and develop that right from a young age. But just small transitions within the pace.
Because like at Piaffe, which is like the ultimate collection, you still want that energy, don't you? It's not just, you don't lose all the energy. You still want the engine. You want the hindquarters to be ducking down a little bit, but you want that bounce as if they've got the springs. And that comes from the lower level training.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, when you start the Piaffe, actually, and even actually in the progressive levels in Dressage up to into 2, we're allowed to travel the Piaffe forward. So, it's still a forward energy. And again, like the canter collection and the Piaffe at the top level, it takes a lot to be able to close it right onto the spot. So I think it's all about progression.
Future for Danny, what are you up to?
I'm quite fortunate to have a lot of lovely young horses to ride. So just keep training the horses and trying to produce them well. And great if we can get some success along the way. Really excited about the team of young horses I've got. Especially I've got a lovely 4-year-old, which I'm very excited about, who will be competing tomorrow. So very excited about him.
And we've got to ask you about your sponsors, because either you've got a sponsor or a shopping habit. I'm not sure which. I'm guessing it's a sponsor, though. How important is sponsorship to you and our sport?
Yeah, great. It makes a big difference and helps us riders a huge amount. And it's great to be supported by a brand. Zebra Products I'm supported by, which I'm lucky enough to get Cavellia Toscana clothing from, as well as actually having my horses in the lovely Amerigo saddles, which are my favourite and I love riding in. So, it really helps.
And we've been asking this question to everybody today. One's easier than the other. We've got one good answer for the hard question, so just to set that up for you. The easy one is, what's the best piece of advice you've ever been given?
Oh, that's a tough one.
No, that's the easy one.
Yeah.
It gets tougher.
Oh, really? I think it's easy to get into worrying about too much what everyone else is doing. And I think actually you've got to train your horses and, try and have your own goals and, just move at your own pace and, not be too worried about what everyone else is doing. I think it's easy to think everyone's better, and especially with social media, but, I think everyone's doing the same thing and trying to improve. And definitely as, you get to know a lot of the top riders, I think we're all doing the same thing and all quite supportive of each other. So, I'd definitely say, don't feed into too much of what everyone else is doing and feeling like you're not doing enough.
And the hard question that only one person has managed to answer properly today, what's the worst piece of advice you've ever been given?
Worst piece of advice.
It's a tough one.
That was a deep breath, wasn't it? Preparing myself.
Oh no, I remember when I was younger and just starting out, and actually, for me, I didn't have a huge amount of financial backing, and I had to work really hard to be able to do this. And it was just if I look back, it's rare that you actually often look back and that it would have been a dream to be able to do this, and I'd never thought it would be possible. But so I think it's good to look back. But I remember someone saying to me that I wouldn't stick at it and wouldn't make anything of it. So I love that sort of. I think okay, watch me.
Bring it.
So great. Yeah.
Good answer, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was very good.
Have you got an answer for that, Bobby? We haven't asked you. What's the worst advice you've ever been given?
Being told that I wasn't going to be a dressage rider and I should probably look at a different career. I was like, right then, let's do this.
That's a good answer as well.
Yeah, see?
Perfect.
Just ask the right people.
That's what we needed to do. Well, it's been a lot of fun. We've had some great interviews today. Danny's the last one. We're done.
Danny is the last one, and you're sadly leaving me, and I'm back with the lovely Jenny tomorrow.
You are. So enjoy that.
Thank you, I will.
But to those watching online, thank you so much for joining us. Another couple of days of great sport here at the LeMieux British Dressage National Championships. So come back, enjoy more from the fan zone and, of course, the sport here as well. But for me, Adam Cromarty, Bobby Haler, and, of course, Danny, enjoy the rest of your evening.